However, while we're on this, one thing that disturbs me about it is that very often they will put a price on something that would be an auction estimate, and it may be a perfectly accurate auction estimate for a large auction house. And an example of this would be they'll say, you'll see them looking at an object and they'll say, this will bring $1,200 to $1,500 at auction. And you look at it and you think, I'm talking about on television, not actually handling the article, and you think, well, that's fine, and you're right. In New York City, it would most likely bring that. But up around here, there are a lot of objects of that type, and they'd be lucky to get $500 to $700 for it. The reason I bring this up is that the major auction houses in the city now have a $5,000 minimum value on an item if they're going to accept it for auction as a single item. And so they've given an estimate on what the piece will bring, but they would not be willing to take it as a single item at auction. And it's very misleading for people who might want to sell it at a later date because they've been told, and they've been told in good faith, $1,200 to $1,500, but in reality, since it would only be included if it were a complete estate or many, many items going to the auction gallery where they're going to take the wheat, and they're also going to take the chaff, it wouldn't be going up on the block at a major auction house in the city.
When do you make the decision to have an object of art, a painting, go to auction, go for an estate sale, go to an auction house? Let's say you have family who disagree how it should be handled. How do you resolve that?
And let me add just one thing to that too, because just in line with that, how do you set up something which I've had the opportunity as a child to actually have gone to where an estate, an actual estate, a home and all this property around it, just everything was put under a tent, and they just auction the whole thing off. I mean, when do you decide to do that?
Well, what you're describing, we used to just refer to as country auctions, and those are great auctions. They're complete contents of houses, and even the major auction houses from time to time in their auxiliary galleries, if they have auxiliary galleries, will get involved with on-premise auctions. And it's a great deal of fun, and it's also can be a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it can be a lot of fun for those of us who might be involved in running it too, because there's the excitement of finding the things in situ where they've lived, and something you come across things that you hadn't expected to see, and not necessarily good things, sometimes very funny things, right. Sometimes very strange things, sometimes things that you wouldn't talk about. There was a house in this city that had been shuttered up for many, many years, and people were very curious about it. And when the lady who owned the house finally died, she had a great many things that were going to auction. And she was from a very, very well-known family, and she had some spectacular collections and a very large estate out in New Jersey. And when the men from one of the major auction houses were cataloging things up on the top floor of the house, they found her son's coffin.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Her son had died quite young in an automobile accident, and it began to explain all of the things of this beautiful mansion being shuttered up and seeming unlived in and so on. So you even get to discover things like that about people, sometimes very tragically. So I lectured on a very regular basis for quite a few decades, and I would do lecture series for colleges and for school systems and adult education and for major business corporations and things of that nature. And invariably during a series of auctions, I would have someone raise their hand and say, "Mr. Markham, you have such an interesting occupation." And I would look out at them and I would say, yes, those words come back to me when I'm in a dusty old attic and I stand up too quickly and crack my head on a beam.
When would you pick the work of art?
All right.
Yeah, take a single
Shannon,
item
I
out.
do believe in using auctions where the things are truly auctionable. And one of the reasons may be if it is something that's constantly bringing a higher price every time it's offered at a public sale. So you have no way of knowing what the ultimate price on the item would be. If it's something that has an international market, I think that it should go at an international auction if it's something major. there are many other reasons that I feel that books and manuscripts will do very, very well if they're important enough, and they do not have to be of major importance, but collectible importance, if they're put at an auction.
So
And when I'm doing an estate, sometimes if I'm in charge of doing the entire thing, I will sometimes use auctioneers for parts of the estate, either in advance or after the on-premise sale, if there's to be an on-premise sale. And I also act as agent for clients who are auctioning things and buying things at auction. So I am quite involved, although I am not an auctioneer myself.
Well, what about using Christie's or Sotheby's or something?
Absolutely.
So if it's over a certain
I
value
have great esteem for them. I have done lots of things that have involved them. I have very good contacts with them, and I have many friends who work for a lot of these firms. And New York City has wonderful auction houses. And I'm not tied. I have no allegiance to a specific auction house. So I have certain houses that I feel do a better job on a type of item than another house will do, and so on. And I
maybe
very,
one
very
place is
much
better
believe in
for
the
art,
auctions.
or-
But it's something that you should know how to consign the things, and you really need to know who to talk to there to get proper estimates on the items, how to work out reserves, and so on. But the one thing that I will warn people, if it is major enough to go at an international auction, it is going to be tied up for 5 to 7 months before you receive any money from it, because there will be the examination of it in the beginning with the estimates, and then it has to be cleared if it's an estate with the heirs. If it's privately owned by the living, it has to be, they have to make up their minds. Then it has to be set up for a sale. And if it's important enough, it definitely should go into what I would refer to as a generic sale, which would be of like objects. And the houses only do these sales several times a year, where they are confined to, such as English sporting art, American paintings, American furniture, English silver, just to give you an idea. And so it's going to be tied up. There's cataloging time before that takes place, because they do wonderful catalogs. Then after the item is sold, it's another, as a general rule, another 30 days before you receive payment, and that refers to 30 working days. So generally it can be another 5 to 6 weeks, which doesn't bother me in the least, because I'm used to it. But if you were somebody who needed money in a hurry,
right.
and let's say you thought you'd sell something in 2 months hence, you
Nobody-
would have the money. That is not generally going to happen with more important art if you're going to sell it properly.
Now, what do you think your accuracy rate is? Like, say you go into a place and you tell the people, well, this estate is probably worth whatever. How close do you come? Like, with a lot more experience, do you get better all the time? Or to estimate how much something would sell at an auction? Or
Joan, the more you get involved in the field, it is such a voluminous field, and it's so catholic in the subjects that are involved, that you realize how much you don't know. But the fact is that the more years you're in the field, you realize when something may be important, even though you do not fully know. And you get a great deal of cooperation from specialist appraisers who realize that you're not going to be wasting their time by calling them up and saying you have a new trio, a painting that's signed you trio, and you cart it down to the expert, and it's a piece of paper that's been printed after a Murillo or a new trio painting. And so you get a great deal of cooperation, and you can also have a lot of questions answered on the telephone, what to look for to determine whether or not this could be what it appears it might be.